Asaba could not receive the missionaries with much enthusiasm. That was when they came to Onitsha. The Igwe Akas of Onitsha actually corrected the poor impression created by Abo Kingdom, Asaba Kingdom, and gave them a warm reception, which made the Queen to permit the mission to stay in Onitsha.
The Second Niger Mission of 1857, led by Reverend Samuel Ajay Crowther, was the beginning of the coming into prominence of the traditional community known today as Onitsha. The major pointer to this great fortune is the River Niger that served as a platform for the anchor of the day spring water vessel that brought the missionaries on that evangelical enterprise to Igbo land.
That mission, led by Samuel Ajay Crowther, came into Onitsha and really impacted that community and its environment.
The initial gesture of hospitality dished out to Crowther and his noble team by the Onitsha natives, with the accompanying friendliness, positioned Onitsha and the indigenes on the brink of early glory. Onitsha therefore has remained exclusively relevant, a must-mention in matters of CMS evangelism and human civilization.
We can say that successfully, Onitsha was the cradle of Anglican evangelization in this part of the land, because the Abo mission was not successful and the Asaba mission was not successful. The Onitsha mission was successful because the indigenes received the gospel from the missionaries.
Reverend Samuel Ajay Crowther weathered the storm of planting Christianity in an expansive area then referred to as Western Equatorial Africa.
Diocese is always expressed in terms of geographical expression. You say from this point to the other point is one diocese. From that to that is another diocese. At the time of Crowther, his installation and the charge he was given was nebulous. In other words, if you translate the long description of his episcopate, of his diocese, it read, anywhere that is not British, anywhere that is not controlled by the British government or the Church of England, you are in charge of that in Africa, especially the western part of Africa.
A diocese simply can be said to be a group of churches under the leadership and the episcopal guidance of a bishop. In the Anglican Church, the diocese is usually exercised from an existing diocese by the Episcopal Synod, which is done through a deed of relinquishment from the old diocese. And such group of churches are put together as a diocese for manageability under the pastoral supervision of a new bishop.
A diocese is a delineated area governed by bishops. If I say bishops, people may say, what's Weke saying? In those days, you may have more than 3 assistant bishops in a diocese. There was a time in those days when a bishop was in Owerri as assistant bishop, one in Enugu State, that is in Nsukka and Enugu. They were all assistant bishops.
A diocese can be described and not defined. Because when you talk of definition, you talk of a standard definition. A diocese is made up of parishes, archdeaconries, and a headquarters with a bishop or bishops. You can have a bishop in charge, you can have assistant bishops.
Not minding the vastness of the then Western Equatorial Africa territory, Onitsha had been the administrative base of the mission, from where Crowther and his lieutenants reached out to the length and breadth of that jurisdiction.
If you are opportuned to see the document of mandate to Crowther and his team, it is to evangelize the Equatorial Africa. That is to mean the scope beyond the Queen's dominion.
The preoccupation of the progenitor of the gospel in Igbo land, Reverend Samuel Ajayi Crowther, who later became a bishop in 1864, was quite contrary and at variance with the interpretation given later by dissenting school of thought. The main aim, however, was in the overriding interest and benefit of humanity.
At that early time, the church was still at the process of becoming. The church was engulfed with teaching people who suddenly discovered a new way of life, trying to bring them out from their traditional idol worship, trying to bring them out from nakedness, trying to bring them out from poverty and all kinds of sickness that they were struggling with ignorantly without knowing.
They came with the objective of converting the Igbos to become Christians. They came to share the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. Don't mind the jokes that people crack, that they came to take our land. They asked us to close our eyes, and when we closed our eyes, they grabbed our land. That is just a joke.
Within the precincts of the area east of the Niger, churches, schools, and hospitals were established to impact positively on the life of the people, thus exposing them to education, adequate health care delivery, civilization, and salvation through Christianity.
The gospel came with both hospital, education, commerce, as a way of enlightening and building the holistic man. So as time goes on and people are becoming educated, you find out that the bishops who started and those who came at the point people have grown in their knowledge will not have the same challenge facing them.
The focus of the mission was to win souls for Christ. A very tedious job. Coming to an environment, very unfamiliar environment to the Europeans, with the sole aim of talking sense into them to abandon paganism and embrace Christianity without the use of force.
Bishop Samuel Ajayi Crowther sowed the seed of the gospel and evangelism in Igbo land and was the first bishop of the Diocese of Western Equatorial Africa. After Crowther were succeeding bishops, mostly foreigners. But later, natives who had grown in knowledge, raised in education and academics, recognized in administrative competence and prowess, began to emerge, taking responsibilities. It has been explained and proven beyond reasonable doubt that Diocese on the Niger blazed the trail as CMS Diocese in Nigeria.
The Diocese on the Niger came as a result of the Niger Mission. Niger Mission came through the River Niger in 1857. But before that, an attempt has been made before the 1857 missionary exploits that now succeeded. There have been other attempts that have failed. So the Diocese of Niger came through that. And the Niger mission is like virtually all the eastern area under then Samuel Ajay Crowley. So at that time, Diocese of Niger and this part of Niger mission is as if it's under the province of West Africa, in what is known as Equatorial Africa.
Lagos was created after a long while from Niger. Lagos was created out of Niger Mission. The history is there. So the scope of the mission was so large. Think of the whole of Nigeria. Think of the whole of Ghana. Think of the whole of all these West African countries.
When it was decided that his territory should be shared into two, specifically the Diocese of Lagos was created from the large expanse of place that he controlled. But he maintained all the other places from Onitsha to the north, to the far east, up to the Cameroons. His influence reached there. Those Niger Delta people who think that they were not under him, it was through him that they got their own diocese. It was regarded that the entire eastern region, to the north, was just one diocese. But at the 1919 agreement, it was decided that Lagos should be carved out. So it was Lagos that was carved out. And in the year 1920, a bishop was consecrated for Lagos.
Crowther's first synod was held in Onitsha in the year 1866, barely 9 years after his arrival on the 27th day of July, 1857. As time progressed and circumstances of convenience and necessity began to rear demanding heads, other dioceses began to emerge out of the Diocese on the Niger. A circumstantial development that had Diocese on the Niger becoming the mother of many infancies.
The Diocese on the Niger, by history, proper history, is the prime diocese in the Church of Nigeria. And having given back to so many dioceses, a lot of its infrastructure had been bequeathed to the new dioceses, as it were.
It's not possible for the bishop to enter every church station and then confirm all the candidates for confirmation. It is not physically possible. When, for example, Uzodike retired, he was still assisting Onyemeokwe. Even at that, sometimes you hear of, sorry, we are not able to visit all the archdeaconry headquarters, all the churches, with two people managing the thing as it was. You find that most bishops, even if you say he has only 10 churches in his diocese, they are very busy. It's very demanding. So it's a pleasant development to have many more.
When the former Bishop Ken, Right Reverend Ken Okeke, was there as Bishop on the Niger, he did his best to expand the diocese. It was under his episcopal leadership that the now Obaru Diocese, Mbammeli Diocese, and Niger West Diocese were created. All those areas were part of the Diocese on the Niger. But under him, those dioceses were created, one for mission work to reach the grassroots and for manageability, so that what one person was covering, now about 4 bishops, so to say, have been empowered. It will also help the new bishops of those areas to be at the place to look at what is happening at the grassroots.
Sometimes, people have ulterior motives in clamoring for dioceses. It's at that juncture that I say, yes, break up. If their motives are political, we can't be under these people. We have been under them so much. We now want to start our own diocese. That is wrong motive. Very wrong motive.
The All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha, was established in 1949 by the then Bishop on the Niger, Cecil John Patterson. But the vision to have a cathedral in Onitsha for the Diocese on the Niger came through the Reverend Joseph Sidney Hill. Sidney Hill was then the Bishop Designate of the newly constituted Diocese of Western Equatorial Africa. However, natural circumstances of mortality did not allow the splendid dream to come true. Bishop Joseph Sidney Hill died on January 5, 1894, but the cathedral vision was not allowed to die with the dead.
Hill had in 1893 prepared a structure, something that was constructed, that he carried about, showing people this is how the cathedral should be, this is where it should be. I learned it was kept at Christ Church Onitsha.
The Right Reverend Herbert Tugwell was recalled from Nigeria, consecrated a bishop on March 4, 1894 in London, and was asked to succeed Bishop Hill of blessed memory. The Episcopacy of Bertram Lasbury, consecrated bishop on the Niger in 1922, took firm resolution to drive the dream of building a befitting cathedral in Onitsha. In 1939, at Christ Church, Onitsha, during the Synod of the Diocese on the Niger, a motion came through Venerable Victor Nwora Omunna, ably seconded by Bishop Alphonsus Chukwuma Onyabo, then an assistant bishop on the Niger and the first native to be consecrated a bishop in June 1937 at St. Paul's Cathedral, London.
Omunna was the person who in 1894 raised a question, and Tugwell was chairmaning the meeting, and Omunna said, "Sir, when do we have a cathedral for Diocese on the Niger?" That was the motion, and he will put it as a motion. It was seconded. Then Tugwell said, "It doesn't seem you people understand the implications of what you're saying. Let us invite," I think it was Wilkerson, the one European who was there. He invited him, and then he talked on cathedral, what a cathedral is, what benefits of a cathedral, and so on and so forth. After the discussion, they set up a committee. Tugwell Committee was made up of knowledgeable people who knew the terrain. One of the terms of reference was to find out the location where the cathedral could be established.
towards the establishment of a substantive cathedral for the diocese, Christ Church Onitsha had been in use, filling the gap as the designated cathedral, but not providing the need, for it was merely a church, the first to be established.
The missionaries that came in 1857, they used Christ Church Onitsha for most of the diocesan events. In fact, it was more like a cathedral at the time, until when Reverend Joseph Sidney Hills, at the time he was appointed bishop on the Niger, even before consecration, the vision to build a befitting cathedral, he was the one that initiated it, even though unfortunately he didn't live to see it even start. But it was his vision that this diocese, the newly created Diocese of Western Equatorial Africa, should have a befitting cathedral.
Originally, where the Diocese of Niger used as cathedral is Christ Church Onitsha. That was the seat of the bishop, even the early missionaries. In fact, the history of the Niger mission and everything that has to do with Diocese of Niger resides at Christ Church. Even the printing machine that printed the first Azundo, the Igbo Catechism, is still in Christ Church. The chain that was used to keep the day spring that brought the element is still in Christ Church. So, and all the diocesan board meetings and all the rest were held in Christ Church. It was from the Christ Church that the decision to now build a place called the Cathedral.
Even when there was no cathedral at Onitsha, to say, where is the bishop's cathedral, where is the diocesan cathedral? At that time, the big church, Christ Church Onitsha, was used for such meetings.
Great and landmark achievements trailed the All Saints Cathedral project when on November 6, 1945, Bishop C.J. Patterson became the bishop on the Niger after Bertram Lasbury.
Patterson was a British. In those days, along the line in the late 60s, war broke out. Patterson suffered humiliation in the hands of the people because his country were backing the Nigerian Federation, while Biafra was struggling to survive, and he was ministering among the Biafrans. So every effort he put in place to convince the British government on the cruel policies of government against Biafra did not bear fruit. He was highly frustrated.
On Wednesday, November 9, 1949, Sir John Stewart McPherson, then Governor General of Nigeria, laid the foundation stone of what stands gloriously today as the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha. Bishop C.J. Patterson preached at the event, an occasion at which he urged prophetic words for future reference, saying, quote, Cathedral of All Saints would stand as a sure and steadfast witness to the things of God in Onitsha. It would proclaim God with the cross shining 100 feet high above its massive tower. It would preach Christ crucified. End of quote.
The vision to have a cathedral in Onitsha was a vision for a cathedral in Nigeria. In fact, it was called the Cathedral. And to set out that national vision, it was the Governor General himself who had to come and lay the foundation of the cathedral.
Patterson approached the dream with speed and vigor, and by 1967, half of the job had been done. distinctive feature of the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha, is its stone-pitched wall. The stones were said to have been moved from a quarry in Abagana, a rural community about 30 kilometers from Onitsha, by people with enthusiastic spirit who were eager to see the cathedral project realized. Various groups had various responsibilities towards the project.
Do you know that all parts of the diocese up to Port Harcourt contributed to the building of All Saints Cathedral financially, and some physically moved stones from Abagana, carrying the stones on their heads to the site of the cathedral. I do remember that as a primary school student, I paid tax for cathedral. At a stage, they were saying one stone will cost so amount of money. Every pupil, if you are in junior primary, you pay half the amount. Senior primary, full amount. Secondary school, full amount, like that.
To every diocese, the cathedral occupies a prominent and unusual position. The cathedral bestows on a diocese the deserving recognition befitting an umbrella body of archdeaconries, parishes, and churches as components under a bishop.
Wheresoever the bishop puts its seat, there is the cathedral. This is simplifying a very complex issue. So if the bishop is visiting any part of his church, he will carry his seat, episcopal seat, and put in its position. Automatically, that place becomes a cathedral.
Like in many other dioceses where after the creation of a new diocese, the oldest church in that area is normally designated a cathedral. That's where the bishop's seat is. Of course, what makes a cathedral distinct is simply because of the bishop's throne, so which is a cathedral.
There are statements about the composition of the cathedral. It's usually carved out from the rest of the church. Cathedral is the only one that has the articles that says, Article A, the chair of the head is so and so, or appointed by so and so.
The All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha, started with the Lady Chapel, conceived in memory of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Remains an area of extra uniqueness in the cathedral building, dedicated on Saturday, May 10, 1952, by the then Bishop of Sudan, Right Reverend A.M. Giles Thorpe.
There are other chapels in the cathedral, but the Lady is the big one. Fortunately, when they were building the cathedral, they started with the Lady Chapel. Now, I read the history of the Lady Chapels, and I can't remember the exact cathedral in Europe that the Lady Chapel was moved from front to behind, from east to west. So the chapel can be moved. A chapel can be moved from one place to the other. For us, the Lady Chapel was the first that was completed, and it was easy to complete compared to the other part of the cathedral. For many years, when it was completed, we thought it was all that was, and we were complaining, this tall building doesn't have space for people.
The Lady Chapel is unique for obvious reasons. It was the first phase of the cathedral building, and there you find the the high altar. The high altar of the cathedral is there. The first bishop's seat was there. The provision was made for the diocesan crest. There, the Lady Chapel, you find the stones, because the vision of Bishop Patterson was to use local materials for the work. So the stones there were brought in from Abagana, Wari side. The doors were carved, some metal doors at Oka. So in fact, virtually all the materials there. Some of the doors were donated as well by individual. Wood, carved wooden doors donated, all made locally, so that the cathedral will be really a cathedral for the indigenous people.
Strategic at the Lady Chapel is the sanctuary, the high altar, the chancel. This section exudes beauty and aesthetics in serene holiness. The louvers usually throw wonderful shades of colors, creating the experience of the rainbow on the altar of the chapel.
In the Anglican tradition, the Lady Chapel is part of a small part of every cathedral where services can be conducted, assuming you don't want to use the whole cathedral. And in most cases, in some cathedrals, the Lady Chapels are almost always dedicated first and get functioning, because to finish a cathedral is not a one-day thing. So if the Lady Chapel is ready, everything can be going on at the Lady Chapel pending the construction of the whole part of the cathedral.
Other exquisite features adorning the rainbow altar of the Lady Chapel are the star of the east, crown of glory, cross bearing the holy dove with the serpent at the base of the cross. The centenary service marking the 100 years of the CMS evangelism in Igbo land was held at the Lady Chapel in 1957. With the completion of the Lady Chapel and ceremonial activities taking place in it, the chapel then assumed the position of a cathedral, though yet to meet master concept and design by architect Richard Schofield Nixon. The Lady Chapel became fully ready to function as a cathedral with the completion of the two adjoining complexes, the administrative building on the left flank and the chapter house on the right.
The cathedral chapter actually is like a body or a board that administers the cathedral. In that chapter, you have representation of the bishop, whoever is the provost, then the canons of the cathedral will have their representation, the chancellor, the registrar. Some of those people who are members of that chapter are really not worshippers in the cathedral, but because the cathedral belongs to the diocese, those people make their own input. So the cathedral committee also send representative in the chapter. So it is the chapter that actually takes the final decision of what goes on in the cathedral.
At completion then, the administrative complex housed the bishop's office, provost's office, and other essential offices, including a library. The chapter house had the room for chapter meetings, an office, kitchen, and conveniences.
One can belong to cathedral chapter without being a member of the cathedral. That is something that you found in history. one could be a member of a cathedral chapter without even being a churchman. When it's time for meeting, he attends a chapter. At the chapter, the reports of the past years are read. At the chapter, if there's going to be a major appointment, the chapter is told and the members of the chapter vote yes. If there's going to be extra expenditure, the chapter approves the expenditure.
As the cathedral project became a dream come true, it also became pertinent to create a platform for like minds and spirited people who took to heart the well-being of the precious cathedral. Then emerged the group, the Friends of the Cathedral.
It was the vision of Archbishop C.J. Patterson to have a group called the Friends of the Cathedral, because in his wisdom at the time, the cathedral should not be limited to the local people for proximity, for those around. The cathedral should be for all well-meaning people of the country who support the work of God and who are willing to contribute their time, their talent, their treasure for the upkeep of the cathedral. So it was in 1959 that this group was set up.
The Friends of the Cathedral themselves should not be left on paper. Just as we have Knights of St. Christopher, or Knights, Dames, or these Friends of the Cathedral should be installed Friends of the Cathedral. It's not a small thing to maintain the cathedral. It is not a small thing to maintain the cathedral.
When the need to finish this cathedral at a record time came, the vision to now have Friends of the Cathedral and those who can raise money to be able to finance the project was now raised. And I know that the Friends of the Cathedral is not once and for all thing. That even in the recent past, a group of people who from time to time are drafted in as Friends of the Cathedral is to ensure that from time to time that the cathedral will leverage on their support and wisdom to keep impacting the society positively.
The All Saints Cathedral Onitsha continued to flourish, and the aim for establishing it also continued unabated until the outbreak of the 3-year civil strife in Nigeria in 1967 during the episcopacy of the first indigenous bishop of the Niger, the Right Reverend Lucius Madubuku Uzodike. The impact of the civil war smeared the beauty of the Lady Chapel. There was severe damages on the pews and glass panes of the cathedral. However, the physical structure resisted the torture and the impact of the travails of the war.
Nothing bad happened to the cathedral. The structure was still there. Everything intact. Minus some of the pews that were used by soldiers. Quickly the pews were replaced, new pews were built. So if you ask me, I'll say there was no effect. I worshipped there, the war came, we ran away, I came back and I saw the same building. Little things were repaired, and it didn't have anything to do with the zeal of the people to worship in the cathedral.
The burdens of the repairs to return the cathedral to its exalted status as well as continue its glorious journey towards an enduring edifice and a universal place of worship was ably masterminded by Sir Louis Nwachukwu Mbanefo, a legal icon, Chancellor of the Cathedral and Chairman, Cathedral Building Committee. Sir Louis saw to the restoration of the cathedral out of her post-war ruins and destruction.
We are here to see somebody who will fraternize Anglican Church in this part of the world, high and above Sir Louis Manefu, who made our church here to be globally recognized. He changed the outlook of that on Niger with his influence and with his exposure.
He was a committed Anglican and he moved people to action. Louis, from his personality, was somebody that moved the indigenous to action, spearheading the efforts of the Anglicans.
The great effort towards the restoration continued in leaps and bounds, though with the attending harsh realities of the post-war economic meltdown, particularly at the eastern part of Nigeria, considered to be the main theater of the 3-year civil war. The Right Reverend Jonathan Arinze-Chukwu Onyemelukwe was consecrated and enthroned the bishop on the Niger in 1975. Onyemelukwe braced up to face the challenges of the restoration of the war-devastated All Saints Cathedral. Being passionate and fully determined, Onyemelukwe's episcopacy initiated the dictum, completing the cathedral in our lifetime.
From the onset, the idea and concept of those who planned it is that they said they were constructing a cathedral of their lifetime, which means let us begin, even if it had to outlive us. Let's begin, because they looked at the magnitude of the project and didn't feel it's something they can finish.
To clear the cloud enveloping the meaning, Bishop Onyemelukwe's dictum of completing the cathedral in our lifetime was changed to finish the cathedral in 1992. With this, there was a clear direction and timeline for the all-important project, and the celebration of the 135 years of the CMS in Nigeria became a launch pad for the consecration of the high place of worship of the Most High God. With utmost vigor, determination, doggedness and resilience, despite all prevailing circumstances at the time, the All Saints Cathedral Onitsha was dedicated on November 1, 1992 by the then Archbishop and Primate of all Nigeria, the Most Reverend Joseph Abiodun Adetiloye.
That day saw Nigeria in one place. That day, I have never seen that kind of crowd in my life. It was a unique sight to behold. It was the day I saw Anglican Church and love it more, the more. You see the Anglican Fellowship, you see the choir singing like angels, you see priests from all over the world converging to dedicate us as cathedral.
The completed cathedral has a main bow of an estimated seating capacity of not less than 3,500 worshippers. Away from the nave, the cathedral gallery provides for another 1,500. At the left flank from the western gate into the cathedral is the oratory chapel, an architectural detachment provided for any worshipper to pour all emotions to the Lord in prayer, petition, and supplication. The Hall of Honor, a basement also on the left flank of the cathedral, bears names of significant donors and contributors to the building of the cathedral. It also provides for archives, a store, and conveniences. The belfry complements the elegance in glory and imposing sight of the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha. It represents another unique essence of the Anglican Church and accomplishes a lot of functions via its use.
In the Anglican Church, having a belfry is part of our tradition because the bell gives information to the congregants about the happening in the church. Even the way you ring the bell has what it communicates. When somebody dies, the style of ringing is different. The style of ringing for worship is different. The style of ringing bell for emergency is different. So, and the belfry stand tall in the city point where everybody who sees it knows the location of the church.
The foundation stone of the belfry was laid on November 1, 1991 and completed within the same year.
Well, some people closed their factories. The donations they gave made it impossible for them to continue producing in those factories. God will reward them for the good deeds they have done.
The pervading aura of excellence around the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha, has invoked upon the edifice a wholesome and uncommon uniqueness. The ambience of the cathedral remains a testimony of divine inspiration, an aspiration accomplished. A sight of the cathedral from its various perspectives leaves a wonderful feel and touch in the heart and mind of any beholder. All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha, casts a lasting visual impression, an indelible experience not only to any first-time visitor to the edifice, but also every regular user and worshipper.
From onset, All Saints Cathedral, All Saints was said to be a cathedral, not a church converted to a cathedral. So that's one of the rich history behind it. It was set out from the one that we are going to build a cathedral.
Do you know that there is no window in the design of the cathedral? You look at it, you see openings, and you see designs. If you put the designs correctly, they represent artwork of Jesus praying, artwork of the angels, and so on and so forth. So that if it rains, in the sort of tropical rains we have in the cathedral, occasionally it disrupts service. But we don't mind it because it will just be for a season.
Considering the large number of people that will gather there, without fan, it is properly ventilated. If you look at the stages with which it goes, you find that as look at it from the aspect of what is written in M372, immortal, invisible, God only wise, most glorious, the ancient of days. Something you cannot really comprehend in a very small time. If you look at the way that is so imposing that I believe there is a mystery which God wants to use that cathedral to teach. It's not an ordinary church. You will also see that it's actually not painted. Even without the paint, the beauty is there.
The description we have there is that Patterson came and prayed. Then this secular man laid the foundation. It's unusual for a secular person to lay the foundation of a place of worship. But that will tell you the intention of the founders. They wanted it to be a national monument. They wanted it to be something that people will know that it belongs to them, not just a holy place.
God, help us to hear your word with attention and understanding.
The Right Reverend Dr. Owen Nwokolo is the 6th indigenous bishop on the Niger.
May be manifest in our lives through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Bishop Nwokolo parades an endearing
thank the
history
Almighty God
in his priesthood journey
for the
and
special
relationship
privilege
with
to
the
stand
Diocese
before
on the
this
Niger
holy
and
convocation
All Saints
of God's
Cathedral,
people
Onitsha. A
to bring the word
predisposition
of
that is
God.
considered not only divine
Grace,
but
the
endowed by providence, by
I
birth and
cannot
nativity.
take this
Owen
opportunity
belongs
for
to
granted
Diocese
by any
on the
means.
Niger and All Saints
And I must
Cathedral.
say,
As God will have it, out of all the archdeacons in the diocese, the bishop on the Niger, Right Reverend Ken Lezokeke, appointed the Venerable Owen Nwokolo, the then Archdeacon of Oyi Archdeaconry, to be the subdean of All Saints Cathedral. And of course, that title was new to All Saints Cathedral at the time, because there hadn't been a subdean before. We only had a provost, then archdeacon in charge, and this time around, for the first time, Owen was going to be the subdean of All Saints Cathedral. So major events in his life and ministry have revolved around the cathedral, from diaconate to the subdeanship. And from 2005 till 2010, he was the subdean of the cathedral.
That wind of uniqueness hovering around Owen Nwokolo continued as events turned out bigger and more spiritually challenging for the then Venerable Owen Chiedozie Nwokolo, the pioneer subdean of the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha. Owen's story continued to enlarge as he found himself in a wider circle of responsibility.
We also saw God divinely, doing his work, moving in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. That at the end of the annual Bishop's Retreat at Abaroto, the primate fixed the consecration of Bishop Owen Nwokolo to take place in All Saints Cathedral, which is something that has never happened before. In fact, rarely do you see a bishop consecrated in his diocese where he is going to work. But in this case, we saw God, and he was the only candidate for consecration. Normally you find 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, Owen was the only candidate for consecration, and that consecration was going to take place in his own cathedral.
And so the Right Reverend Dr. Owen Chiedozie Nwokolo found around him another set of uncommon circumstances not too discernible from those associated with his diocese, Niger, and seat of bishopric power, the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha.
It was in 1994 when the Right Reverend Dr. Jonathan Arezechukwu was bishop. That was when Owen, the then Owen, was ordained as a deacon, and that event took place in All Saints Cathedral. 1 year after, he was priested with others in All Saints Cathedral as well. And then, as he grew in ministry, he was preferred a canon, and every canon is installed in a cathedral. And of course, Owen and his installation was also installed as a canon of the cathedral. And then it was in 2001, rather in 2000, the first few months of the episcopacy of Bishop Ken Sandy Edozie Okeke, precisely in December 2000, when the Reverend Canon Owen Chiedozie Nwokolo was preferred an archdeacon and then collected in All Saints Cathedral.
His nature from time is that he's calm and calculated. He's not moved by irrelevancies. The best he can do for you is to say, Ewo, Did it really happen? And he will face the facts.
After his assumption of office, Owen set out to recreate history. His vision was to reinvent the mother Niger that has lost many grounds and much steam as a result of the unavoidable instinct of creation of more dioceses. Such becomes a huge task, deserving focus, vision, and strategic planning that will ultimately lead to breaking fallow grounds, but not sowing among thorns.
He came in 2010, and the first thing he did was to couch a mission statement which was not originally in existence. And that mission statement which he couched helped us to plan an envisioning conference that now galvanized the diocese and set a focus to direct the growth of the diocese. And that is what today is the mission statement of the Diocese of Niger, which is to disciple every child, youth, and adult to be dedicated to Christ and committed to the church. And for such individuals so discipled to be able to serve the Lord sincerely and faithfully and take their place in the scheme of things in the society.
Having created many dioceses, it became imperative that there needs to be reinventing and restructuring so that the Diocese of Niger can still stand and have all the infrastructure it needs to be a full-fledged diocese and sustainable diocese, especially in the 21st century and all the demands of the time. So that's why this episcopacy has embarked on massive structural development.
The present episcopacy of Owen Nwokolo is resolute not only in building on the legacies of his predecessors, he is also being creative and as well as in tune with trend and modernity, particularly in human resource development and capacity building, ensuring pegs in corresponding holes.
We have done a lot by professionalizing some departments. Before the inception of this episcopacy, anybody can work anywhere. But when we came on board, the need to insist that the account departments must be managed by people who have the know-how in that department. That is putting square pegs in square holes. And that is why from that time, for the past 10 years, there is nobody engaged in the account department who didn't have, even if he's an OND in accounting or BSc in accounting. All the people employed from the time we came are all those who are competent in that field.
It's good to work with a vision. Know what you want. Know where you are going. And that's Owen. Knows what he's doing. He's doing this because of this. He's doing this because of that. He's doing that because of that. And he will tell you they will all meet.
It is with great delight that we welcome the great people of this diocese on the Niger to the seat of their diocesan headquarters, All Saints Cathedral, the mother and nurse of many infancies.
The strength of the diocese on the Niger has largely derived from the support and contributions of the women ministry. The ministry had been made vibrant at the early stage of the reigns of indigenous priests as bishops on the Niger. A a foundation Owen's episcopacy is solidly building on. Today, the Diocese on the Niger has continued to relish great contributions in mega projects and programs initiated and executed by the Women Ministry. Historically, the Diocese on the Niger in her 16 decades and 5 years of existence has squared up creditably in line with the dreams and aspirations of the God-sent missionaries. The All Saints Cathedral also has continued to blossom in glory and splendor in total accomplishment of the desires and aspirations of the forebears. The Diocese and the Cathedral are continuous in their matching divine dispositions as the frontiers of an uncommon cathedral.